Hey y'all, it's Laura. Welcome back to another Coco Vanilla Studio video. This time we are using the Great Escape collection, the brand new one from Coco Vanilla, to scrap some birthday photos. So this is a camping themed collection, or a bit of an outdoorsy themed collection anyway. I think you could use it really easily for a road trip or travel as well. And the color scheme is so fun. It's a very usable mixture of your simple neutrals. I think lots of grays, lots of blues, lots of greens, and then you have some pops of yellow and orange and a little bit of red. And I think it's just a great combination for scrapping boy photos, and particularly for my boys, because they do tend to wear a lot of red and orange and the grays. We do like the grays over here. They don't wear a lot of black. There's some black, but not a lot of black. But it's the gray tones that they seem to really drift towards when they're picking out their snarky t-shirts or clothes like that. And so a lot of my photos that feature my kiddos, especially my boys, have those colors. Whereas when I'm scrapping pictures of my girls, of my twins especially, they have bright colored clothes. They like a lot of the pinks and the yellows and the really bright, bold colors. And so this is really fun to kind of switch back and forth between those more neutral tones and those bright colors. This collection has a little bit of both, and I think that's why it is so usable. I am going to go ahead and create a bit of a column design on this one. This has been a common choice for me lately because I am doing a lot of photos on one page. I do tend to scrap multi-photo more often than single photo. And when I do multi-photo, quite often I have 3 or 4 photos, and a great way to get a lot of photos onto a page is to separate them just a little bit. So again, I have 4 photos on this page. I have one 3x4 photo that is going to be my main focal image, and I'm putting that on the right side of the page. And then on the left, I've created a column here with 3 2x3 photos. And then I've squeezed in a couple of little cut apart pieces in between to fill in those spaces. Now, this is a fairly simple design in the background. I don't normally go crazy wild with my backgrounds. I focus on the details within the layout instead of building a complicated background and then adding more and more on top of it. It just becomes really busy, and my focus is always on the photos. So that is where I want the viewers' focus to be. I want the photos to stand out, not the bits and pieces. So for this layout, I did promise we would be doing some star layouts with this collection, and this is a step up from the last design team layout that I did. It has even more stars than the last one. We're doing a little kind of shower of stars behind my main photo and the frame that I cut in half. So that's a great tip right there. If you have one photo frame and you kind of want to extend it, you want to make it look longer, you can cut it in half and tuck it behind your photos or behind your layers. And it looks like that frame, it looks like 2 frames really. You can make it look like one long frame, but this one really looks like 2 frames because I've kind of offset the bottom one to the left. And so it feels like I've used 2 frames, there's only one. That's a little trick to get a little bit more out of your embellishments. Cut them up, make them work, tuck them behind other things, and then you get the feeling that there's a whole piece back there, but there may not be. Maybe you trimmed it and used the other half somewhere else. I do that fairly often. So with these little stars, I'm going to spread them out across the right side of my page, and I did fussy cut those from one of the pattern papers, and tried to start with the big ones. I usually do when creating a scattered background like this. I start with the big ones, go to the medium, and then the small, so that you're just kind of filling in spaces with those small stars rather than trying to fit in the big stars in between the small ones. That's a little bit more tricky. So it's good if you can start with the big ones. I am trying to spread out the colors of the stars. So you'll notice I have a big giant gray one at the top. I've put a kind of medium-sized gray one at the bottom. I've put a larger orange one at the bottom. I've put a smaller orange one at the top. So I'm kind of trying to balance out my colors as well as the sizes of the stars when I'm creating a background like this. It comes together fairly quickly. Again, you're just spreading out the stars and moving them as you see. This little space needs to be filled, that little space needs to be filled. But one of the things I am thinking very intentionally about with these stars is that I want to keep them in a vertical line. So one of the major things that I do with stars, hearts, hexagons, circles, whatever. I do have a tendency to go on an angle. I really like doing a diagonal flow with my scattered backgrounds. And this one, I really wanted it to be a reflection of the column on the left side. And so I really needed that stars to fall in a mostly straight line. And so that is something I'm thinking about while assembling this layout. I didn't want it to stick out too much further than my photo and journaling spot there, which is from the cut apart sheet. And I wanted it to kind of stay within that little band that I've created. And so that's what I'm thinking about as I'm adding more and more stars. Now that I've gotten through the fussy cut stars that I had in the small, medium, and large sizes, then I moved on to these teeny, 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 tiny little stars. And this is going to be my scattering stage a little early on. So normally I finish my layouts with scattering and splattering, but when I'm doing this kind of scattered background, I like to have those little bitty bits and pieces added in now. I will probably still add more tiny little stars at the end, but this is definitely part of that scattering process, adding in those fine details that really make a layout feel finished. They give it just that little something extra, that oomph to kind of lift it up a little bit, elevate your design just a little bit. I love those fine details. I think they make such a tremendous difference. Now for the title, I did want to use a chipboard title because they had some really, really cool ones in the chipboard pack this time, and I really liked this Fun Times Ahead. Now, initially, I was trying to decide if I just wanted to do Fun Times, if I wanted to do Fun Times Ahead, and I went back and forth on it for a while in my head trying to decide, but when I got Fun Times onto the page, I realized that it didn't really have a ton of room left for the ahead part, and so I just went ahead and made that modification and kept it at Fun Times, which is totally fine. I try to be fairly flexible in my scrapping so that if when I audition something it doesn't work out, that's okay. I can move on, I can keep trying things. Try not to let yourself get too bogged down with, oh, I thought this was going to work and then it didn't. Try to shift the narrative in your head there. Instead of seeing it as a failure, see it as a try. I tried it, didn't work out, that's okay. Let's try something else. I like to view it as an experiment, as an audition, as an attempt, not necessarily the only option. And I think that sometimes we creatives can get stuck in that sort of mindset of this is the way I want it to be. This is the only way that it will look good. And if it doesn't work out, we get very frustrated and just want to walk away. And so I have been teaching myself over the years to become more flexible, particularly with my love of design, my love of simple backgrounds. I do try to push myself a little bit more creatively with the embellishing, and by doing that, having my background firmly in place really gives me a sense of structure that I am more comfortable with being flexible around. So if I have a built-in structure already in place that I love, which is why I use go-to designs, those very simple designs, is because I know how those designs work. I am comfortable with them, and so then I can be a bit more experimental with my embellishing. So think about that when you're scrapping. I think it's really important to kind of analyze your scrapbooking and look at your style, look at the designs you tend to lean towards, and try to figure out why, because knowing the why will help you to make scrapping a much more fluid experience. It will make your entire process much faster if you can narrow down what you like and why you like it. And I just find that that makes my scrapping much, much easier. This particular layout took me about 30 minutes and it came together quite quickly, which was fantastic. I love when that happens for me. It doesn't always, but I love when it does. So now finishing up with a few more, like I said, I was going to add more scattering bits at the end. I definitely did. I came in with some teeny, teeny, tiny little punched stars that I had used a little hand punch on in the scraps. So these are kind of like the bold colors that were in the background of my fussy cutting or on the back of the scraps of my fussy cutting. I went ahead and punched those out in star shapes because I knew I was going to be using stars, and use them to scatter amidst the larger stars. I'm also going to use them as some scattering bits around any clusters of embellishments that I've used, like some of these little flags over here. I will also grab a couple of these little feathers, I believe, and bring those in near the clusters on the photos on the left side, which added another little touch of something interesting on that side of the page. Now, because I have 3 photos on that left side, I did want to leave that pretty simple. I don't want to compete with those too much. I'm centering most of the busyness behind the one main photo. So I want you to notice those two different sides, how I've handled both of those two sides differently, because I don't want them to combat each other, right? I don't want them to fight for the attention. I want that larger photo to grab your attention first, and then your eye to lead itself over to the left side of the page. Now, how do I lead the eye? In this particular layout, I have taken my journaling spot and put it on a pretty sharp angle. Instead of just having it straight like the frame and like my photo, I've put it on a pretty sharp angle there, which kind of leads your eye to the left. So you see the main photo, you see the journaling, and then it leads your eye to look to the left to see the remaining photos. And that's generally what I like to do with my scrapping, is have one main focal point that leads you to other focal points. Just a fun way to keep the eye moving around the page. It adds a little bit of interest. It's something that stands out just a little bit because it's not the same as everything else on the page. And so playing with those concepts is something that I do a lot in my scrapping. Now be sure to check out the Coco Vanilla blog at cocovanilla.com.au to see even more inspiration for this new collection and the previous collections, because we are still currently using a lot of the old collections too. So if you don't have this new one yet, definitely go check out the blog. I assure you there's tons of inspiration for using even more of the Coco Vanilla collections. Finishing this one up with my scattering and splattering. I am doing, like I said, a little bit more scattering with some teeny tiny little stars that I'm gluing around the larger stars, as well as adding some little feathers to the chipboard pieces that I've used to embellish my smaller photos on the left side, so little clusters of feathers to give that just a little bit more interest. And then I'll come in with my splattering, which is in 2 phases. The Nuvo drops, I'm using black this time instead of gold. I know, switching it up just a little. And then coming in with some uncontrolled splatter using some gold ink spray. And I just shake it up really good and splatter it around the outside of my clusters. Oh, I did use gold Nuvo on this as well. So I used both gold and black Nuvo on this layout, which is a little bit fun. Adds more of like a confetti feel in the background to those stars. Gives them more of a celebration birthday vibe, I think. And then this gold splatter ink spray that I'm going to use will give it a full finishing touch around the edges of those stars and around the edges of my clusters of embellishments as well. And that's it. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below. And until next time, bye y'all.